Of course, not all the casualties were dead. Heaps of corpses littered the Somme, but there were also an unbelievable amount of wounded that had to be dealt with. Stretcher bearers gallantly recovered the wounded from no man's land under constant threat of being fired upon. Indeed, so heroic were the efforts of these brave medics that 2 Victoria Crosses were won by these men. The wounded were ferried back to casualty clearing stations and then onto a ship to take them to a hospital back home. World War I medical expert Graham Bandy explained how the wounded would have been treated by techniques we would be familiar with today.
So what kind of wounds would we be seeing then?
Well, the main wounds you would actually see during the First World War, which actually caused over 80% of all wounds, was not machine gun fire, it was actually shell fire.
Okay.
Shell fire caused the majority of all wounds in the First World War.
Wow.
So there you'll be having traumatic amputations, i.e. legs being blown off.
And what about painkillers and things like that then?
Painkillers, the first thing you'll be given is morphine. Or you could use one of these.
Ah, no, yeah, tell me what's
This is called a Schimmelbusch mask. Lint goes over the top of here and is held down by this piece here.
Put it on the face.
This then goes on the face whilst they're lying down, and you'll get a couple of drops of chloroform and ether onto there to actually knock them out. Breathe it in and they're unconscious.
But how advanced were they with the surgery? Obviously, they were seeing some horrific things.
Oh yes, absolutely. The surgery advanced as they went on through the war. They could rebuild faces, put plates in heads. There's some amazing photographs implanting ceramic plates into the face or into the head. They'd be growing extra bits where they were connecting the nose to the arm to grow extra bits of skin. And of course by 1917 they were giving matched blood transfusions.
Matched blood transfusions in 1917? One of the new weapons that we saw was gas. Germans came up with it first. So how did medicine and how did we combat this? How did we deal with this?
Again, it was innovation within the medical services. They had the P hoods and the PH hoods, which were quite interesting because to activate them, to stop them getting through, these were just large cloth hoods with a mica window through them, and you actually breathed through the cloth itself, and to activate it you had to pee on it.
No, so you had to urinate on the cloth in order to activate the cloth to stop it from coming through?
Yeah.
And did it work?
Yeah, and it was totally effective and totally negated the use of gas by the Germans. You have nothing to fear from a gas attack if your helmet or respirator is in good order, if you remain
calm and carry out the measures in which you've been instructed.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
It works. It tells you what to do before and after, and this is very little difference to what you sort of would get today in today's British Army.
Right.
So that negated it all. One of the things they did use was the Nelson's inhaler, which was initially used for bronchitis and asthma and stuff, but it was found it actually helped heal the lungs a bit quicker as well. Yes, there were gas casualties who had destroyed lungs because they were made to bleed and a lot of other problems with it, but 80% did get back to the line.
So how would the inhaler work, just quickly?
It's quick. You've got your whichever choice of smelly stuff is inside here. Boiling water's poured onto it. You've got a chimney here. Breathe in and out through the tube. And so you've still got a bit of taste of the flavour of the original stuff in there. War moves on medicine. It's one of the beneficial side effects that you get from medicine. 1917, you would have had blood transfusions, you would have had the diagnostic x-rays, you'd have had plastic surgery, and then you'd have come back home and had masseurs giving you physiotherapy. And that's what the legacy that it's left us with.
The Battle of the Somme dragged on until November. It was only the bad weather that put a stop to the madness. The English were roughly 7 miles better off, but the hard-won new ground was so churned up with the fighting, it was no use. For 7 miles of useless ground, 420,000 men had been killed or wounded.
the Somme was not just one day. The Somme was a period of 4 months, during which 400,000 British soldiers became casualties. And during those 4 months, the advance was a little over 6 miles. But really, whether this was a total failure or some sort of success on points remains open to debate. Because quite early in the Battle of the Somme, by the middle of July, the Germans had desisted in their attacks on Verdun. So the primary objective of launching the Battle of the Somme had in fact been fulfilled. But whether that sacrifice was justified in terms of what Haig called the wearing out battle is really open to the verdict of history.
But it was what happened on the first day of the Somme that gives it its special place in history. It was, and still is, the British Army's greatest disaster. Rank bad planning played its part, but it was the weapons that caused the greatest damage. Weapons for the 20th century, used on men employing tactics from the 19th. Commanders from another era struggled to come to terms with the modern battlefield. It was Kitchener's army, the flower of Britain's youth, who paid the price.